Hello everybody, this is Zero Day. This is the second scenario and the most simple scenario out of the entire Cloudgoat series as of now. You start off as a very high privileged user who can perform IAM get and IAM list permissions on all resources, but on top of that you have a IAM set default policy version permission, which when you list, after listing all the policy versions that are associated with your managed policy, you see that one of the versions you can perform any action on any resource. So all you have to do is set your default policy version as that extremely powerful version, and you can do whatever you would like, including giving yourself administrator access. We were provided the credentials of the first user named Raynor, as you can see here. So let's put it in Raynor. We'll call him Raynor like this, and we'll put in the access key and the secret key. We will leave it the default region name as US East 1. So now that we are the Raynor user, let's try to enumerate. So we could do that with the IAM module, which will show us all the permissions and roles associated with this identity. So first of all, let's see if we could even do a get user command, which is basically a who am I. We can see that this is our username. Here's our ARN. And we even get a little bit more data related to the tags associated with this user. So to find out the permissions, we need to see which policies are attached to this user. So we can do that with the list-attached-user policies command, which will look at all the managed policies that are attached to the specified identity. And we need to provide our profile and also our username. So we see that the username is this. So let's put that in there. And this is our managed policy. Before looking at that, let's see if we have any inline policies, which are just policies that are embedded in an identity. So we could do that with the list user policies command. And again, provide the username. And we see there are no inline policies associated with this user. So let's look at the managed policy. And we could do that with the get-policy command. We provide our profile, and we'll see that it looks for our policy ARN, which we have right here. So --policy-ARN, put that in. And it just gives us a little more data about our policy. We can see that our default version ID is v1. We have one attachment, and the rest of this data is not that interesting. Let's look at this version ID v1 so we can get an idea of what our permissions are. So we could do that with the AWS IAM get-policy-version. We specify our profile, and we give our ARN, policy ARN, which is this. And we also have to give a version ID, which is v1, because that is the version that is right now enabled for our policy. And these are the policies associated with this user. We have IAM get and IAM list on all resources, but more interestingly, we can set the default policy version for all resources. So right now our default version is v1, but let's look at our other versions to see maybe if other versions contain permissions that we currently do not have. And maybe there are permissions that are even more powerful than the one we have right now. So first of all, let's list our permissions. And if there's ever any kind of command that you are not sure about, we could just do the AWS IAM help. So IAM is the module and of course we could just do help, just like this, and we can look at all the different commands that are associated with this module. So we want to see the versions, we want to list the versions, so let's look for all strings that contain version. We have this get-policy-version, which we just did, and we have list policy versions right here. So let's do that. Let's say we wanted more information on this specific command. We can just do AWS put in the command, and then type in help, just like this. And this will show us all the different parameters that can be specified with this command, and also the necessary parameter that you must have in order to successfully run this command. So all of these are optional parameters, and this is the necessary parameter. So AWS IAM list-policy-versions, and we want to give it a policy ARN, which we have up here. And with this we can see all of the different versions. So we have 5 versions, and everything is set to false right now because we are using v1 right now. But as we saw from our permissions, we can set a default version, which is, where was it? Right here. Set default policy version. So let's do AWS. Before we do that, we don't want to set a default version for any policy if we don't know what that policy entails. Say we set a default version as v2, and v2 had almost no permissions at all. Then we would be stuck at v2. So let's first look at all the different version IDs using the command that we used before. So here we were looking at v1. Here's v2. Now v2 allows us to list a bucket, get an object, and list all buckets for S3. And you could do this on all resources. So say we suddenly set our default version as v2. Then we would be stuck with these permissions, and we would not be able to do it. We would not be able to continue from that. So let's look at the version 3. Version 3 looks extremely interesting because we can perform any action on any resource. Let's look at version 4. Version 4, we can perform any action on any, or we cannot perform any action on any resources, given that the source IP address is not any of these. So this is not as good of a policy because it has these restrictions, and it's also not allowing us to do it in the first place. It says effect deny. So let's look at version 5. Here we are allowed to perform IAM get on any resource, given that the resource was created after 2017. So this is not as good of a policy because we have these restrictions and it's only IAM get. So version 3 looked like the most interesting policy because it has the most permissions. We can do anything we want on any resource. So let's set our default policy version as this version. Set-default-version. Default policy version. --version -id. We wanted v3 and our policy ARN, which was this up here, and our profile of Raynor. So now we have those permissions, and if we look at our I'll do a who am I again with AWS IAM get-user. Here's our username, and this is our only managed policy at the moment. But if you remember, we could perform any action on any resource right now. So let's try to give ourselves the administrator access And we could do that with the attach user policy command, just like this, attach-user-policy. And we need to provide a username in order to run this command and a policy ARN. So AWS IAM attach user policy, let's give our username and our policy ARN. So as the policy ARN, we want administrator access. So we could look that up, what the administrator access ARN, administrator access. Let's see, we can go over here, administrator access. And here is the policy ARN for administrators. Now we can give ourselves that policy and we provide our username. And now if we list the same command, we are now also the administrator. So using this misconfigured user who has this set default policy version permission, we were able to get administrator access because the other versions of the policy were too permissive. We were able to put any action on any resource and therefore gain administrator access using the attach user policy command. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.